let's get to why you all came here. So we are going to do an amazing panel with these awesome speakers about women in tech and Gen AI, being International Women's Day on the weekend. I'm very lucky to work for a very cool AI startup called Tessel. I've only been there since October. I've done the startup thing before, but startup in AI is intense. And so hopefully with the community background and all the rest of it, we'll be able to have some really cool discussions. But before I get these lovely panelists, and I'll sit down, hopefully you can see us, to introduce themselves, I wanted to know a little bit about who you are. So how many people in the room, just by show of hands, use AI in their day job? So they're actually using it at work. Amazing. How many people are playing with it at home but haven't really found that like work fit just yet? Epic. And who here hasn't played with it, wants to play with it, is here tonight to find out more, has heard about this AI hype? It's okay. Awesome. Okay, so we've all played with it in some way. Now, I've got some amazing questions because I managed to speak to these panelists before today, but this panel is for you. So I'm going to allow a lot of time for questions. Please ask your questions. There's that awkward moment where your heart's beating and you really want to stick up your hand and you feel awkward and you wonder, maybe it's a stupid question, or you know what, I'll go speak to the panelists afterwards. Please ask. It's a moment of feeling uncomfortable for hopefully a lifetime of knowledge. Also, other people in the room might want to know the exact same answer to the exact same question, so you're helping both them out and the panelists out by not answering the same question 10 times after the event. But it's a moment of feeling awkward. And so please, this panel's for you. I have had great chats with them. And so I really want to make sure you get the most out of it. But that's enough from me. And so let's dive in. But before we do, let's get to know our panelists a little bit. Macy, do you want to make a quick introduction of who you are? I'm going to time you. No, I'm joking. But Macy, hello.
She knows I ramble because we work together. My name is Macy. I work at Tessel also. We're a Gen AI startup. We're working on reimagining software engineering for this new world. And it's a crowded market, but I love it. And I would describe myself as incurably optimistic about generative AI and tech in general. I'll pass it over.
Thank you so much, Macy. Yeah, I'm Patricia Walsh. I'm really excited to be here, and congratulations to everyone and on their International Women's Day. I think that's an exciting thing for us all to be here to celebrate. My background, I started my career as a software engineer at Microsoft, C++, C#. So if you've ever used Microsoft Outlook, you've used something that I had a hand in creating, which I'm always very proud to have something that's product and consumer facing. I went on to be director of engineering with Dow Jones, which is how I ended up in London. I, from Dow Jones, transitioned to work at Meta, where I worked in what's called trust and safety. So that's reducing the surface area for bad actors, which really runs the range of election interference to very minor things like spam and everything in between. That is where I got my really first intro into working hands-on with AI. So it's using machine learning models to reduce surface area for bad actors. And I just recently started a new role. So I'm senior engineering manager at Bumble, but back in trust and safety. So working in the same space. I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you.
Oh. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Pendleton, and I work for Gusto, the space that you're in right now. I work in the data function, and specifically I head up the data governance team. You might find that that's a bit of an odd connection for AI, but one of the things that we've done since the sort of easily accessibility of Gen AI that has happened over the last kind of 12 months or so is we created a leadership group within Gusto, and the role I play there is around AI ethics, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, where our risk appetite is right now for playing with these tools. And actually, having chatted to quite a few of you today, I'm feeling like we're quite open to this stuff. We seem to have taken a few more risks than others, so I'd love to chat to more of you later about what your companies are doing in this space.
Thank you so much. Well, let's get on to the meaty questions. Now, one of the things Macy didn't tell you about her career is she didn't always start out in tech. Macy actually comes from a neurobiology background then went off into more sort of office management style work. Did a boot camp, started working as a software developer, and then somehow landed up in this crazy world of AI, right? And so, Macy, I'd just like to know from you, I think you got your first job off Craigslist, which is like the UK Gumtree, I suppose. Not exactly, but that's what you got a first tech role. I'd like to know, like, how did this happen? Like, how did you land up in AI? Did you like go and like self-teach yourself a whole bunch of stuff? Like, for anyone in the audience who's like, well, roles are changing, I don't necessarily have an AI background. How the hell do I work in it? It's like, what did you do?
Yeah, great question. And thanks for bulking out my intro. I did forget to mention that. Yeah, so I've kind of had a little bit of a like snake path to where I am now. I want to say about the AI field, I think this is going to be dominated by newcomers. I think I myself have always benefited in tech from kind of being a bit of a newcomer. In general, I think there's actually not a ton of room for specialists. If you're a specialist, you really need to go hard on what you want to specialize in. I think tech is all about generalizing, and it's something that I've done throughout my career. I don't want to specialize. I want to learn as much as I can. And like this world of Gen AI, that world really favors that mindset, I think. You can learn enough about anything. And I think like this career path, any career path in tech really rewards curiosity and interest. If you're interested in something, you can get into it. Like, I think I'm proof of that. As Sam said, I come from a bootcamp background. So I went to Makers Academy here in London about a decade ago. Yikes. But even in the world of software engineering, I've had all kinds of different roles with different focuses. And it's all kind of come out of just being interested in different things and making that clear to the people around me and seeking it out myself.
That's awesome. And I think for some people who maybe don't come from a tech background and transitioning in or new to it, I think that's really, really useful. Now, Patricia's also someone who left a whole bunch of stuff out of her bio. And if you don't know this about Patricia, she is, other than an epically amazing engineer and has grown an amazing tech career, she also has this whole other career of being an amazing athlete. And has won world records and gone to the Olympics. And so whilst maybe some of us can't relate to being a very epic professional athlete, might be some people in the room who've taken time off work for, being a working mom or illness, or I took last year off to travel because I thought I was still in my 20s. And so, Patricia, I'd love to know from you, sort of has returning back into, I know you kind of tried to keep your skills a bit fresh while you were being this epic athlete, but how was the transition back? How did you get this role in AI? And did AI assist in helping you transition back into the world of tech?
Yeah, thank you. It is quite a unique experience that I've had the privilege to represent my country. So I was working as a software engineer at Microsoft. I was doing triathlon as a hobby. I got the world record for fastest blind and low vision Ironman distance triathlon in 2011. They added triathlon to the Paralympics with the first inaugural event was going to be 2016. So the U.S. national team reached out to me, asked me about my level of interest. Growing up with blindness and always being disenfranchised because disability is often quite separate, the idea of going to the Olympics I'd never even crossed my mind that would be, something in my future as a viable option. So once I was recruited by U.S. national team, it was quite an obvious choice. Even though I'd worked very hard to get my career at Microsoft, you really only get one shot at going to the Olympics. So I made a transition where I was working for a startup. And the trade-off I made with them was that I would work around my training hours, but I would always put in my 40 hours a week. But that often meant, you're at the pool 5 a.m. and then you're done at 7 and then you take calls and then you're back on the bike and, really kind of a chaotic schedule for a 6-year window. So I was able to keep up my skills, but it did change my mindset. In that period of time when I was training and working, I really was a lot more focused on achieving at that current level, but not getting promotions and not advancing my career. So when I did come back full time, everyone who had started their career at the same moment as I did was a little bit ahead. So really when I came back, it was a lot about figuring out very deliberate and specific actions that I could take. And for me, it was upskilling in machine learning. So, we live in a world now where there's so much content for continued learning available online. So I took all the Coursera, Stanford Education, Stanford University has all of their machine learning courses available on Coursera. So like the Andrew Ng, if anyone knows him, he's quite popular in the machine learning space. So I did a few certificates, did a few privacy and security certificates, and really put all that same energy that I'd had put in my training into trying to bridge the gaps of anything that had advanced without me in that 6-year window. Because all of us in technology know that it really reinvents itself, every couple of years. What I studied in university is no longer used, and it wasn't that long ago. So I would say, in terms of AI, I think that's where I focused my effort. But then also, this was a bit before ChatGPT, but sometimes now in preparation for interviews, these tools can actually be very good at creating a learning plan, because sometimes it's hard to know where to start. So you can just go to ChatGPT and say, tell me everything I need to know about data intensive processing or something specific. And it'll give you at least a good kind of collection of topics to then further investigate. There really are no shortcuts, but it can certainly help narrow down this kind of broad range of things we all need to be accountable for. Hopefully that helped.
No, definitely. And I think utilizing AI, at the moment, I think is a lot of like assistant-based work. I personally have moderated quite a few panels in my career, but I'm also highly dyslexic. So writing down stuff is not my thing. I will talk and talk and talk, but I have a panic attack if you make me write a tweet. And even for this panel, I had some great conversations, but I used AI to read the transcripts, tell me what questions I should ask. I fine-tuned it. I chose what I wanted to do, but something that would have taken me maybe a week to really structure a great panel was now, allowing me to do a lot more with my time. So if we just look at like AI from an assistant point of view and how we can accelerate the knowledge we have and then add to it with what knowledge am I missing, like Patricia said, it really helps us like grow in our careers. Now, Kathy, I know that you also left out some stuff in your bio about the work that you've been doing at Gusto in terms of actually rolling out AI adoption and getting people on board with using it and what tools they're using. And there's something to be said about how AI can not only help you be efficient yourself, but also with team efficiencies and collaboration and working together. And I wonder if you can share a little bit about like what you've learned from trying to quote unquote roll out AI and any learnings there about collaboration.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you all gave examples of this, but the main thing for me, my observation, is that it's really a game changer for just freeing us up. So at Gusto, we've actually done an awful lot in bringing in the new technology to allow people to automate those repetitive tasks. Even things like taking notes and actions at meetings, at brainstorming, at strategy days. We here at Gusto, we use the Google Transcript on Google Meet to actually transcript the meetings, the conversations. We'll then use ChatGPT. We actually built our own ChatGPT off the back, where you just load the transcript in and it brings it out, Gusto branded format. It creates your action table, tags people into their actions. You don't even have to Slack them to say, hey, remember you picked up these 3 things. It just pops up on their task list. So we've managed to really get this flow going. And why have we bothered to do that? It's all about the value that those people can bring. So if we can take those tasks away from them, what are they going to do at that time that we've just given them? They're going to work on the strategical things that we need in a business. And I am confident that all of you are in the same boat as me, where the list of things we want to do is always larger than the list of things we've actually got time to do. So anything in the space of productivity and releasing resources is definitely going to help. And the other thing that we found generally, like we didn't plan this, we didn't think this was going to happen, but by taking the stress out of a meeting that somebody has to be a note taker and somebody has to take their actions or note your own actions down, we've actually found that collaboration has increased because we've taken that mental load off of everybody's shoulders and we've said, if you're in this meeting, you can be in this meeting 100%. Doesn't matter if you end the meeting with 10 actions, it's taken care of. You will get that message at the end. So just focus on the conversation. And I think that's really changed the level of collaboration that we've got across the business. Such a small thing, but it's really, really helped us.
We actually had a team small hands strategy session, whatever, this week, just came out of it. And as I said, dyslexic, hate taking notes. And we used a tool called Granola. So very, very similar. It takes notes. But what I really liked about them, and I'm sure other tools do this, but everyone's like also take from notes is very different. Like, yes, there's action items, but what I value out of a meeting isn't necessarily what Macy values or what everyone else values. What I thought was quite interesting was not even putting a summary out, I could just send a link to the Granola and then anyone could query against it. So my boss Simon could be like, oh, tell me what my action items are. Or I'd like a breakdown of what we just discussed when it comes to our social media plan. Or just tell me what we said about this new website we're launching. And so rather than going, have we captured everything as well? Because then you're like, oh, I remember Mandy said in that meeting 3 weeks ago, something quite interesting about X, but no one took it down because we weren't talking about X at the time. And so there's also these things that can help us in the long term with calling back on agenda notes, which I thought was quite exciting and interesting because I get overwhelmed by just like what's valuable to everyone. But we also know that what you get out of AI isn't always what we want. I don't know if anyone's asked, my favorite thing is to ask design tools to do things and you're like, give me a fluffy rabbit with a unicorn mane, and the thing that comes out is like, what is that weird character, and don't show it to children, they'll be scared. But Macy, you have built a career around prompting AIs. And what did you say? AIs are some of your best friends? LLMs, should I say? And so I'd like to know from you, like, obviously it can be really, really frustrating, but from your experience, fine-tuning AI prompts, like what are the biggest mistakes people are making using AI? What are tricks to make it better? Like, how do you get more useful results when asking it to do stuff?
Yeah, I always feel a bit sheepish talking about this because I don't think there's any like magic answer. My number one answer to this is like, be specific. Oftentimes when we prompt, we know what we're looking for. At least we know what we're not looking for. You have an idea in your head of what you need, and it's kind of a communication puzzle to get there. And you have to remember, like, these LLMs, they're limited to what they've been trained on for the most part, right? So they're not magic. They're prediction machines. They're trying to predict what it is that you need based on the input. So it's important that our input is really high quality. It's very likely that you're going to have frustrating experiences with LLMs. I do every day. But that just means that there's a puzzle in here. Maybe it means that there's like a multi-step kind of interaction that you need. And like, don't give up. Don't give up on them. They're trying. But I think that really is the most important thing about now having LLMs, multiple LLMs as coworkers. Like, you need to generate, our colleague Simon uses this amazing term, mechanical sympathy, which is just the feeling of like understanding how a system works and knowing how to interface with it the best that you can. This term comes out of F1, I think. And it refers to the driver like being really, really in tune with the car. Maybe it's a little bit of a stretch of an analogy, but you see where I'm going with this. Like, there's a way to generate some sympathy for the LLM and know how to get the most out of it. I do see a lot of people, especially in the software engineering world, kind of single shot a prompt, like, try something once. Oh, it didn't work. It gave me weird code. I guess AI just isn't that good. It's like, well, I don't know. There's an iterative process that we need to learn about here. And there's also some emergent properties of LLMs, I would say. There are things that we're still figuring out. I mean, these models have billions of parameters. You might prompt it with something that it's never, ever seen before. We're still learning about this stuff, and we're going to be learning for years and years. So be part of the research just by trying more stuff.
Macy's got a really good podcast episode at LLM prompting on the AI native dev, so you should listen to it. But I remember when I listened to that podcast episode, one of the things that helped me, and it was mainly for maybe more technical prompting. I'm not a software engineer, I just for some reason work in software. But you spoke about like the order of which you prompt. So I would like give whatever LLM like all this information and then ask it the question I wanted to ask. And you did a thing of like ask it what you want and then get like it's going to almost work down your prompt systematically. And so now I'm like, I'm going to give you some text. From that text, I want you to do X, Y, and Z and pull out this. And then I give it the extra information. And I've noticed like personally, I get a lot better things out of it. So I'd say that's my little hack, but I learned it from Macy. So I would definitely listen to that podcast episode because there's lots more good tidbits. But Kathy, I know that you, obviously with the work that you do, you use LLMs to like spot patterns and work with data, but it also has a lot of blind spots. When have you seen AI failing and that people aren't like talking about enough? Can we talk, let's like rag on LLMs for a bit and talk about what they're doing wrong.
Yeah. So you're right, AI is great at spotting patterns. And like one of the first things I did when I first started playing, after I'd got over asking, to write me limericks and, improve my emails and that kind of stuff, one of the first things I did was actually take some of our existing data that we'd been using, trusting, relying on, throw it through ChatGPT and say, what else can you tell me about this? I'm pretty shocked at all the things it came up with that we hadn't spotted ourselves, to be honest. But there is something that it can't do very well right now, or at least in my opinion, definitely not an expert. But it can't tell the story behind it. So it can look at the data, it can tell you the patterns, it can call out the things that it thinks are not right, but it can't tell you why. It can't overlay the context of human behavior or the information that that might be wrong with that data, why you're getting that spike, why you're getting that difference. It can't do all of that. It can actually do the trends, it can give you the numbers, it can do a whole bunch of stuff, visuals, fantastic, but it can't overlay that extra information, that stuff that we still have. There's probably a few people in the room thinking, yeah, just throw it in a document and load that in and then ask it again. But it's not quite the same. Like you have to be able to tell the story around the data that you're seeing. So while it can still do the patterns and it definitely can do it faster than most of the other tools on the market, it does still have those blind spots. And I think the thing that we've not started talking about yet in the GenAI space is what the long-term effects of this tooling is going to be on us. Like, anyone in the audience got kids that are just like permanently glued to their mobile phone screens? I was chatting earlier about a group of children who were all over on a play date, but they're probably too old to use that phrase. And the room went silent, and when the parent popped their head in, everyone was just looking at their screens. They're all in the same room, but everyone's just looking at their screens. I wonder with this technology, are we going to become too dependent on it? Is there a risk here that we rely on it too much and we remove the human accountability from the decisions that are being made here? And I think that's something that we need to start talking about more. How do we keep the human accountable for the things that we are allowing this technology to do on our behalf?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I'm going to jump to a question because that flows very, very nicely into it. But it's one of the things we talk about is like the human side of things. And a lot of people worry, like, is AI going to take my job? And, now if I can write 20 emails in 5 minutes and, instead of a team of 10 doing something, now a team of 2 can do something. So are we all going to lose our jobs? And I know, Macy, you've got this theory, which I absolutely love. You mentioned something about like the 10x kind of innovator. And rather than looking at it as like, how much does this reduce our effort? How much does it add to it? I don't want to put any more context there, but do you want to talk a little bit about that, like 10 times stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I think that in general, like, look, the AI kind of revolution applies to all of us. It applies to every industry. It applies to every person. It applies to every line of work. And that means that every industry is now competing with people who kind of get there first in terms of leveraging AI really, really well. And I think if a business's kind of first port of call is, I would rather fire a bunch of my employees whose jobs I can now automate, instead of, okay, how do we 10x our ambitions then with the people we have? Every employee we've got is effectively now 20 people. Like, what does that mean for us? And I think as employees, maybe that makes our jobs more meaningful. Like these, if you're in customer service, for example, do you want to respond to the same query about refunds like 10 times a day? Of course you don't. All of this like kind of menial stuff can be automated. And I think that actually makes more room for the human element. And I think it makes the competitive landscape really, really, really interesting and actually maybe evens it out a little bit, right? You don't have to be a mega corp with, hundreds of millions of pounds of funding in order to compete. You can be really creative and scrappy and super productive with the help of these tools. I think that's a helpful framing. Like, look, I don't think that every company or every industry is going to see it that way. Like, of course, there are going to be shifts. But I think in general, like, this is a reality that every industry is going to have to level with.
And I suppose every individual can maybe see how they can 10x themselves, right? Rather than before we had to make ourselves indisposable. It was work 90-hour days and never sleep and don't have children and don't have a social life and do all these extra things. Now you can use AI and be a really productive human that people want to keep. And so there is a bit of that like ownership, even if you do work for a company who sees that as like, now I can get rid of half my task force, which hopefully they don't. Maybe, some of us can be the ones they keep because we've worked out how to utilize AI to add more pizzazz and jazz. And I think creativity, that's one thing I love about it. It takes I love processes, don't get me wrong. I am a process-driven person. You give me a packing line and I will sit there and I will fold a box. But I also like that it does a lot of those mundane tasks for me, so I can be more creative. Now, we are talking a little bit like, Kathy, you mentioned stuff about like children and online and all the data we're giving it. And there's this whole thing about like ethics and safety. And Patricia, I know a lot of your job is keeping people safe online, especially, I suppose, in the Bumble space as well, with now the whole dating side of things and weird people online. But anyways, I would like to know like a bit from you about like what have you realized about like AI and AI safety and AI ethics that you can share with us?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I think so. My main experience was at Meta, which the scale of user interactions at Meta is actually really hard to fathom until you're in it. When I first joined, I thought millions of users was a big deal, but they won't, they're talking billions of users. So a couple things to say about safety that I think maybe aren't well understood. Firstly, I think safety is actually a big priority for the big players, but it's to a degree, I wouldn't say unsolvable problem, but it's a very difficult problem to solve. So if we look at the wide range of potential harms, the things that I've worked on myself are protecting minors online, and then also identifying romance scammers. And maybe I'll start with romance scammers. When we think of romance scams, so this is basically an individual who will befriend or initiate romantic relationships with one or many other individuals with the intention of building a relationship with them long-term to eventually ask for some sort of money or some sort of financial exchange. The challenge becomes a few things. Firstly, they now have access to individuals at a global level. So there's no jurisdiction that can make this a crime, or if they made it a crime, it's really not enforceable. So they have really low risk for these bad actors. Secondly, they're very organized. So you're not dealing with like one bad person who's trying to connect with other people, other good actors. You're actually dealing with organized crime. So they have a really limitless amount of money and infrastructure and support to invest in new ways of attacking. In this case, an attack would be a building a relationship. Also, they've got scale. They're not interacting with one person and creating a relationship with them. They're interacting with hundreds of them. And the other thing is, because they don't need an immediate gratification, they are playing a long game. So if someone befriended me on Facebook today and asked me to transfer £1,000, absolutely not. If it's someone who befriends me on Facebook, shows interest in my life, and a year later asks me for £5 and then more and more and more, it's something that people can get sucked into quite quickly. So the challenge from a machine learning or AI point of view is you need to identify the patterns of these bad actors and how they're engaging and what's different from how a actor with good intent would present, and then figure out how to identify those patterns at scale. So this also becomes a bit challenging because they've got limitless resources. So as soon as you find a pattern that identifies the bad actors and then puts enforcement actions in place, so blocking accounts or shadow banning, any of these things that you can put as an enforcement action, they're just going to change their attack because they've got a lot of resources and they're very sophisticated in their attack. And that's called behavioral drift. So your pattern recognition only works for so long. Another challenge is we don't have ground truth measurement. So what that would mean is, of these accounts that have been identified as harmful, they can be either true positive, that was a bad actor, it could be a false positive, that's just someone who falls in love easily. It could be false negative, you didn't catch them, they're still out there doing the same thing. So you've got, it's quite challenging because the harm is off platform, we don't really have a reality to compare against other than a set of proxy measurements, which is like the best available. Some other challenges, we talk a lot about transparency and explainability. In the adversarial space, the more transparent we are about the models we're using to identify bad actors at scale, the more information our attackers have to change their attack. So some of the lack of transparency is actually to protect our defenses, to make people more safe. And the one last thing I'll say is on explainability. It's not where explainability becomes difficult is we don't have one model, we have many, many models, and the outcome of those models become inputs to other models. So it becomes a bit of a spider web of logic. So if one entity is creating an embedding to determine if it's a fake account, and someone else is doing an embedding that determines if any anomalies in the patterns of communication, and there's many, many others that go into other models, say something for like abusive accounts, at some point, if something goes wrong, it's really hard to go backwards to figure out where in the various models that are intertwined with one another, it's hard to kind of decipher and debug that and figure out if something changes, what changed. Actually, I'll say one last thing. Protecting children online is very difficult because I've done a lot of work with children's online privacy protection. If someone is identified as an under 13-year-old user, you have to delete all their data. But what that then means is, what can you train your models on for detection if you don't have any data for identifying under 13 users? So I think sometimes the privacy regulations, whilst they have a great intention and I think are absolutely necessary, there are some times where we're absolutely hamstrung by the existing protections. So it really, for the use case of safety, needs to be considered a bit separately. Sorry, that was quite a long answer.
No. And I think it's quite interesting to kind of hear both the positive things AI does to help us like do these things at scale, and then the limitations and the spider webs we can get lost in. And, but like before, a lot of humans would have to process all that data and look at horrible things online and try to figure it out. And now even though it's hard to detect, they're good at detecting patterns. So do we get to these things a bit faster? Can we hopefully protect more people online? But all of that, I don't know if you felt it. For me, a little overwhelming, I'm not going to lie. And there's an element of using AI the way I think a lot of people do. Like my sister's a nursery school teacher and she gets it to help her write her like reports and stuff, and it's a bit of an assistant. And then there's this like overwhelming use of AI where it's like data driven, like Macy's working for a company that's creating like these new products, and you can kind of sometimes feel like you're being a little left behind in the big picture of AI, the where it can really go, rather than, and don't get me wrong, ChatGPT, great to have an assistant. But everyone's using it for that. Like how, Kathy, how would you say to people who feel maybe a little overwhelmed or feel a bit like, how do I keep up with all this stuff? Like all my Instagram is someone telling me about a new tool. And I love it for some of them, but I'm like, I'm not about to play with all these tools. And so like, do you have any advice for anyone in the room that's like, yeah, I've used it a bit for like assistant-based stuff, but like, how do I not feel overwhelmed by the scale of being left behind?
So first off, like, I totally get it. I worked in tech for 20 years, but I'm not really a techie. I'm not software engineering. I work in data governance. Yes, I can code, but everyone can code nowadays. So I can talk you through what I did and how I stopped myself from falling behind my colleagues and feeling completely overwhelmed with how I started this journey. Look, I'm going to teach you to suck eggs here, but sometimes you need to hear someone say it out loud for it to make sense. But just take it one step at a time. Like, you don't listen to the amazing thing that your colleague did and immediately think, well, I can't do that. You find something that's for you that you can do. Like, I kid you not, choose your tool and ask it to write you a limerick. Ask it to write you a nice greeting for your colleague who's going off on maternity leave. Ask it what present to buy your teenager, like any of these day-to-day things. Just get using it. But find something that will work for you, something that you're doing all the time, that you want to get that time back. Like, anyone do like meal planning? Fantastic. Ask it to plan your meals. Tell it what you like, what you don't like. Tell it to come up, are you on a diet? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want more vegetables every day? Like, just everyday things. And then the other bit that, like, I am really into time blocking my calendar. Like, if any of you ever have the pleasure of working with me and get access to my calendar, it's a rainbow in there. And it's the only way I can get things done. So what I personally did is I blocked time out 30 minutes every week, and I did something with that in the GenAI space. It was either something I'd seen in a newsletter and thought, I'll give that a go. Something I'd done myself that week, the traditional way, and thought, wonder if I can do this quicker, faster, smarter. But I just started really small. I dedicated that time and I built up all of that momentum to sort of get to a point where it was like, do you know what? I can build my own GPT now. I can rely on this stuff. I've figured out my prompts. I know how I can trust that it's going to give me the same information every time. I'm still not a software engineer. I'm still not going to be sat here in a year's time saying, I have built this amazing thing and I'm now buying my private island because I've sold it off to some big tech conglomerate. But it's working for me. And that's all that we need to do at this stage, is make it work for you. And I've got a great stat for you here that I lifted off a company called Code First Girls that we work with. That's all about getting the next generation interested in a career in tech. And they did a survey across a lot of companies, and they found out that women are much more likely than men to actually acquire these sorts of skills through non-traditional methods such as on-the-job training. And the difference is quite considerable. So about 28% of women in a tech career reported that they learn new tech through on-the-job training, through figuring out how to blend it into their everyday tasks, compared to only 18% of men. But 62% of men said that they learn new technology through traditional methods like classroom teaching, online teaching, training courses, etc. So quite a big difference between men and women and how we learn. So for everyone in the room, my advice is just start small, pick something, put some time in your diary, commit to doing it, and you'll be amazed how quickly you're going to pick this up.
Yeah, I saw a Instagram thread the other day, and it was like, use this prompt in ChatGPT, and it was one of those like, hey ChatGPT, based on what you know about me, what do you think I'm good at? Where are my like flaws? Where are my strengths? Be brutally honest. Bob. Like it was this prompt, so I was like, okay, great. And I use mine mainly for work-based stuff, and I threw it in. And what was quite interesting about that, other than the obvious of it's like you do these types of jobs and you do too much and you should delegate. And I was like, I work for a startup. There's no one to delegate to. But what was quite interesting was the thing that it recognized about me that I didn't recognize about myself was that I was more data-driven. I never said I didn't think I was data-driven, but I actually do feel I'm not really good with the stats and the strategy and stuff. And it was like, actually, you're more data-driven than you think. And it gave me all these like prompts and told me like what I should work on. And even that in itself guided me on what I didn't realize I was good at and how to grow. So sometimes it's even just like, if you're using some of these tools, like ask questions back at it. Like, where do you think I should... What have I been quite good at? What do you know about me? Tell me more. I like using other people's prompts that they've written. If someone else has written a good prompt, take the prompt. You don't need to figure out how to make brand new prompts. And Macy, before we'll do some audience questions straight after this, but I know you kind of have a two-half question. One is, I know that you have a feeling around why maybe women in AI will be stronger than men. That's a generalization, but because of the way we talk and interact and how LLMs work. And then you also have an opinion around like AI adoption and how fast it's moving and how we could have a like, kind of quicker way of being left behind. And I'd like to know your twofold thoughts on that. And then I will be coming to the audience for questions. So if you have questions, think about them. Remember, a moment of feeling awkward, lifetime of knowledge. But Macy.
Yeah. About the gap, like I said earlier, like this Gen AI wave applies to everyone. And I could not agree more with what you were saying, Kathy. I could not agree more with that. I think the best way to get ahead is like pick the lowest friction thing that you can think of that you can incorporate into your everyday life. Making the use of an LLM into a habit for you is going to be like a game changer. And I don't want to bring any like doom and gloom here. I really don't. But I do worry about this gap in 5 years' time. I worry about the adoption gap. Those of us who use LLMs are going to find our lives to be so much easier in 5 years' time than those who don't. And we're going to have some serious skill advantages, and we're going to be able to learn, and we're going to understand new technologies that are built on top of this stuff because we're going to have an instinct about how it works. I worry about people who are not in that camp. I think it's the responsibility as well of providers of LLMs and providers of LLM-backed tools to make sure that they get in the hands of as many people as possible for exactly this reason. But you know, I'm sure that all of us have like a friend or a family member who, if we said ChatGPT at the dinner table, they would not know what we're talking about, right? Or roll their eyes and be like, oh, whatever, is that Facebook? That worries me. That really worries me. And I think like a practical takeaway that I would suggest, get those people using this stuff. Like make it not mysterious. It's not mysterious. It's free. You know, go to chatgpt.com. Like, figure out something to ask. Ask for limericks. You know, of course we ask for limericks every day. It's an everyday low friction thing. But yeah, like, I think that's really important. Now, as for my, I mean, God forbid I generalize.
Oh, please do.
But I do notice this. I notice this in the software engineering space. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. I'm going to stereotype men a little bit. But men are very, my experience has been very happy to like rage quit. Oh, it didn't produce a package that passed its test. AI is trash. Again, this is a communication puzzle. Like, this is a conversation. It's a generative conversation. Between the two, who do you think is better at conversations? I have an answer to that. But anyway, enough generalizing. I think in general, like women have been socialized to communicate more effectively. Like, and that is a skill that's transferable to LLM use. It really, really is. A lot of the prompting advice that I said, like if you listen to my podcast episode, you're going to hear me say over and over and over again, this is just like you would communicate with a person. Make the task clear, give examples, you know, don't be mysterious in what you want. Don't expect magic. This LLM is like a highly, highly capable employee of yours, essentially. Be nice to it. Be nice to it. Have a little empathy. Like it will take you a really, really long way, especially in these everyday tasks.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think that's a perfect segue to ask some questions. I do like to think of it as, you know, if I look back, anyone who can't now use Microsoft Word or Excel or whatever, you know, are you computer literate kind of means like, can you open your email? Will be AI in the future of, you know, if you're not playing with it, even if you're just writing limericks at home and you just understand how it works, I do think it'll help you go so much further. The same way, just being a bit, like my brother walks dogs for a living. He opens up his spreadsheets and he's just like, Sam, help me. And getting him on AI has been interesting. But just, yeah, just play with it. That's why, you know, you might not think it's as exciting. And most people put up their hands saying they were using it for something. But when you go back to your colleagues, your friends, you know, if they can't think of a use case for their working environment, just use it, as we said, to make fun things because you'll just know how to use it.